So we are back and recording, and now we're going to look at a few a few specific situations where you might do something else. These are certainly techniques you would have seen in all forms of boxing today, whether it's in the ring, whether it's in the gym, whether like recreational. And I think it's important we acknowledge that the gym and the ring are kind of different spaces in terms of the tactics. There are a number of things that you can practice in sparring safely in like a friendly gym setting that you can't necessarily you couldn't necessarily do safety in a tournament setting, which I think is true of any martial art. You see that in HEMA all the time. There's a reason why a lot of tournaments ban things like pommel strikes because they just cannot be done safely, or grappling for that matter, when people are aggro and really trying to win. But if you're mostly trying to have fun and are very concerned about your friend's safety, and honest about, and there's nothing really on the line, the difference between tapping someone with an effective pommel strike and throwing what would be effective pommel strike but pulled is kind of nebulous. Whereas in a tournament that's a long argument over application of the rules. All right, so we're going to look at just a few special instances. All right, cool. So the first, and this is one of my favorites, is the cross counter. So rather than just throwing off to one side, I throw off to one side, but I also turn my fist over. This is like the one not, one of these sort of straight punches, like standard punches you see in Elliot, he's quite fond of this. So all I do is same as a cross, except my fist is inverted, and I want to step out a bit. You actually see in Elliot, he breaks the line with his feet to really get my head out of the way and my body over. And the idea with this is I've got an opponent coming in with a particularly strong punch, strong straight punch. Especially you can bait this by even lowering your arms a little, or letting your hands drop. So I can be sitting, rotating my hands, I start rotating low, and my opponent goes, "Oh, there's no way Tim's going to get a parry up in time," and they come in with a big punch, and then I come over with a cross counter. So the way I do it, I turn my foot out, step out with my foot basically my insole state facing towards my opponent. I lean. I want to basically connect my face to my hip with my arm. So I'm leaning, diving over, and my fist comes over inverted, facing directly down. So if you remember the parry counter that I did before, that's basically the same kind of punch as that, but on a much bigger lead. So cross counter, and again cross counter. I'll show you that from the side as well. So cross counter. All right, so let's practice that a few times. So just relaxing and cross counter, cross counter, cross counter, and cross counter, and cross counter, and cross counter. All right, so that's kind of, situation one. That's something you see in a lot of different styles of boxing from the period. I mean, it's in Elliot, so it's probably quite common because Major Elliot is kind of, trying to think of a polite way of saying basic bitch, but he's the burger and fries of, period of late 19th century British martial arts. He is what's the standard normal thing that even if you don't do it, which probably, certainly in the case of Sabre, and it's just a lot of people didn't, you'd know about it, you understand it. All right, so I had a bit of a comment. I'm just going to quickly check that before I move on to the chat. So Moshe said, I use the exact same planning and set up for my overhand rights. Yeah, it's pretty much the it is pretty much the standard kind of, or yeah, the standard, or the ancestor of the overhand right, I guess. I'm quite fond of this motion because the closest I've ever come to knocking someone out was basically this. So overhand right off a parry, off you know, a power hand parry. This was in very soft, gentle sparring. It was a gentle blow, and my partner stopped and was stunned and said that they needed to sit down for a bit. And I panicked and profusely apologized because we weren't meant to be going with any power. And my training partner just said, look, there's no way to get enough power out of that to not make it dangerous. So just keep that one for self-defense, which is kind of why I like it, and like to practice it, but also why, you know, I'm very careful using that sort of thing in any sparring I do. All right, so the next thing we get is a variant defense. Monstery does this, where instead of blocking inwards, he circles his hand out and knocks his opponent's hand across. So this is kind of the ancestor of, you know, like the modern boxing kind of pat down kind of defenses. So instead of patting downwards, I pat sideways and move. So the footwork is I trace my foot sideways. I go from being narrow to being wide. My toes still face my opponent. And I twist, and I want to put my weight basically towards this foot. So you can see how, depending on where my weight is, my body is moving, and I get quite a good bit of movement out of it. But I also get some rotation. You know, I get good rotation of my hips to really expel my opponent. So all I do is disengage and push, and sort of threw the punch in there because I got a bit excited. Fond of this one. So disengage, push, and then follow up with just, I don't know if this is a straight right or a cross, because my head is already in the position it would be for a cross, but I don't actually move my head to throw it. So just whatever punch this is. All right, so disengage, bang. Disengage, and this is very much a fencing disengage motion. If you came to the knife class I did like 2 months ago, this is how you disengage a knife. And in, I think Andre, so either Andre or Renault very explicitly describes it that way. He says, you know, it's like rotating your fist in boxing to disengage with a knife. So disengage and hit. Disengage, tapping my opponent's side, really expelling and hit. Disengage and hit. Disengage and hit. Disengage and hit. Disengage, hit. Right. So it's common from Monster. That's primarily from Monster, although I'm sure I've seen it other places, just none spring to mind right now. So if you're watching this at home in the recording, or you just remember me saying this, let me know in the comments what other sources this comes from, if you know of any, because, you know, audience engagement. Yes, this is quite nice as a way of coming in. The other kind of variant I'll show this from the side are what's called stop hits. So Monstry's solution to grappling, because Monstry doesn't really have much wrestling, is what he calls a stop hit. So if someone comes in, stop hit. This is kind of a similar motion to a stop cut in Sabre. What I do is I drop my weight, because dropping weight weirdly enough generates a lot of power, and I bring my back foot back so I can move back a bit. So I come in and stop hit. So extend, drop my weight, and back. So I'm putting a bit of space between me and my opponent, but I'm also, you know, I'm also stopping them. I don't know if this is going to work against someone who's a trained grappler. In fact, I'd be a bit skeptical, but I do think it'll work against someone who's trying to come in and just like bear hug you, or, you know, particularly if you're like me and taller than your opponent. If you've got someone trying to do the old grab and swing, grab and swing, then you can use this as a way of kind of stopping them from getting the grab. So extend, squat, and back. Extend, squat, and back. Extend, squat, and back. Extend, squat, and back. Right. extend, squat, and back. And extend, squat, and back. And once more for luck, extend, squat, and back. All right. So those are kind of the three, I don't know, I find those are kind of the three kind of cool, like, little extra things that you see on, you see with standard boxing in the period. You know, and that's sort of, they're things that can kind of come up in any of the applications or in the places you would apply boxing to someone. All right, so before we move on, are there any questions? Cool, it looks like there's no questions. So I'm just going to pause recording.